Hey everybody, it's Anthony back with another video, and today I want to do a Boss GT100 video. I want to go and dive a little bit into it and talk a little bit about taking a decent or an okay tone and giving it that extra special something that will make it inspiring to play, and it'll feel good in the fingers. You know how like sometimes amp modeling people talk about it doesn't respond like a real amp. It's gonna kind of help with that a little bit. And I also want to talk about kind of my philosophy on tone. I've been very fortunate that I stumbled across some things way back in the day. I'm talking about, we're talking about over 20 years ago, where I was experimenting with my first processor. It was a Boss ME30, I think it was called. I think that's what it was called. I don't remember. But I got a lot of compliments on my tone because back then I didn't know better. And I think today we have people that are trying to get an amp modeler. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, how authentic does it sound to an actual Marshall? Or how does the Mesa Boogie amp modeler in my little processor sound compared to an actual Mesa Boogie or to a Fender Twin? How accurate? And I think that mentality is it's like a little stumbling block for a lot of people, because to me, and this is like I said, back in the day, I didn't know better. And I would experiment all the time because I didn't know what I was doing. And I would find something and I'd be like, oh, that sounds good. I wasn't thinking it sounded like a Marshall, because back then, the Boss multi-effects processor that one I had, I can't talk about all of them because I didn't own all of them. But my multi-effects processor didn't have like a Marshall setting or a Fender Twin setting. It had one little button that you push, and it would be like an amp simulator. That's all it was. An amp simulator, and you put it on and it's supposed to sound more like a speaker when you put your headphones on. And what ended up happening is that I liked the way the amp simulator sounded through the actual amplifier. It would be an amp with an amp simulator, and it would round out the tone for certain patches. I would click on the patch, I would push that button, and it sounded good to me. So to me, it wasn't about sounding like the real thing, like the real Marshall or the real Fender. It was about sounding good, and I would develop my own sounds. I didn't sound like a Marshall guy. I didn't sound like, I had my own particular tones that I was developing. And as I started just experimenting, because I was having a blast experimenting back in the day, I started developing my own ear to what I thought was acceptable tone. So I fast forward, now we're in the technology age when everything's exploded. Amp modelers can sound like the real thing now. I mean, you got Kempers, you've got everything going on. And because of the way I kind of approach tone, I don't feel like I'm missing out because I don't have a Kemper or I don't have even the latest Boss GT1000. I don't feel like I'm missing out. I have what I need, and I am still discovering so many tones all the time. Like if you look over here off to the side, and all of these tones are tones I developed and I use, and it's just crazy. I could keep going. All of these, some of these are from the old patches that were pre-programmed, but a bulk of them are my tones, and I use them all the time, like I said. So I'm gonna give you a little tip that I use that I haven't seen anybody give online. And I think it really helps get that sweet, distorted, metal tone with the good soaring leads and that chunk when you do the riffs. And it takes it from like a thin, almost sterile tone, and it kind of pushes it into that's what I was looking for kind of domain. The first thing that I do is the amount of gain I use, number one. I use my noise suppressor as like a measuring deal. What I mean by that is when I have my distortion on, you see here I have my gain. I have it on the high gain switch, but then I have the gain turned way down over here. And so if I turn off my noise suppressor, and it's recording right now, Very, very little hiss. That's my gauge on if I have too much distortion. If the jump from this to this is noticeable or too noticeable, unless I'm really paying attention, then I have too much distortion. And that is, I live by that rule. And if you do that, what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up opening up your tone. It's going to sound fuller. You're going to hear more of the dynamics because, believe it or not, sometimes the less distortion you have, the more full your tone sounds, the more dynamic your tone sounds. It may sound crazy and counterintuitive, but it's absolutely true. If you put more gain, more levels, more distortion, pushing the levels to the max, what ends up happening is you're going to have a smaller sound. Everything's going to get compressed. You're going to lose your dynamics. You're going to lose your clarity. You're going to lose a lot of that stuff that we're looking for, the tightness on the bottom end. Too much signal going through. You can use that for for what it's worth, but experiment with that and try it. And I think what you'll see is you're going to find out that it really changes stuff. Because metal guys, what we do is we take a high output amp. We put, and I've seen this happen, we've put a distortion pedal in front, and then we have all that signal, and then we get the highest output pickups possible, and we put a volume pot on there that gives it the highest output from the pickups possible through that 500K or 1000K volume pot, and it's just too much, and you're wondering why it doesn't sound good. I know a guy, or I've heard of a guy, I don't know him personally, but there was this guy who bought a really expensive amplifier. It was like, I think it was like a high-end Mesa Boogie or something like that. Really awesome amplifier. He gets a multi-effects processor in front of it, and and this is the bad kind of experiment, okay? This isn't like what I was talking about earlier. So he puts the gain on the amp, the gain on the effects processor, and why even have a Mesa Boogie, $2,000-$3,000 amplifier if all you're gonna do is push the signal to the point where it doesn't matter if it was a Line 6 Spider or a $2,000-$3,000 Mesa Boogie, the tone is exactly the same. It's just hiss. So take that for what it's worth. So let's go into the tone. So here's my Bogner tone, and I'll flip through these screens here so you can go through your boss, and you can just follow these settings. And go ahead and do that. Another little thing, sometimes push the mic position back a little bit eases up that high end, the unappealing high end. But anyway, that's for another discussion. So those are my settings. Then I have a reverb, and let me turn my noise suppressor back on. So what I do, and I've never seen anybody talk about this. I'm going to give you a demonstration of the tone like this with nothing on there. It doesn't sound bad. It's just a little bit harsh, a little bit thin, and I want to have like a more of a round tone, kind of like a John Petrucci tone. That kind of roundness you equate with a nice tone, kind of like John Petrucci's, like I was mentioning. His tone is very alive, very round, and has a nice tone to it. Anyway, so okay, not bad. It's passable, but you can do something to sweeten it up a little bit. The FX2 or FX1, you can do either one. There's something in here that nobody uses. Oh yeah, okay. So go here and look for tone modify. Okay. The other, I was gonna go somewhere else with this, but I'll get to that in a little bit. And look at these three things right here. You can experiment on your own with these three resonators, but check this out. So it goes from, right? Click this on. It warms it up a tiny bit. It adds a little bit of bottom end, but not overbearing. But you can do some other stuff. The resonance right here, if I want to add bass, but I want to take away that woofiness. I don't know what the correct term is, but you know when you're chugging on that low E and the speaker's kind of like distorting, and it's kind of, I call it woofiness because that's the only, well, I'll just demonstrate. Let me just show you. Trying to find the words I can just show you. Okay, see if this will do it. That right there. Oh, that it's again going back to what we were talking about before. Too much signal, too much everything. So if we just do this, take the resonance, lower it. You can lower it all the way and then experiment from there. And then you can now turn the bass up a little bit, and it's going to take away all the unpleasant low ends. A little bit better. You got to experiment though. You got to. Well, now I'm starting to hear where I'm liking it. I'm feeling it. I went from this. Not bad. Most of the people that have a Boss, they would have said, okay, that's good enough, right? And this is, guys, I'm telling you, listen to me. This is where you can compete with the really expensive amp modelers with something so simple as this. Go look at my last video, which is called the Retro Warrior Turbo's Revenge, and listen to the guitar tone on the solo. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm not. But I'm using myself as an example. I've tested it. I get compliments from my musician friends. The tone that you have on that song, they really like it. I get compliments all the time. And it's a Boss GT100. And they're thinking it's a real amp, or they're thinking it's a high-end amp modeler. No, we have it right here. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So just to go back and forth. Turn it back on. Now let's listen to it again. Okay. The other thing is you could play with the high end also, and you could add a little bit of sizzle, like Glenn DeLen says on one of his videos, the sizzle. That's not bad, right? I like the way it sounds. I'm more into the warmer tones anyway. But if you want to add a little bit of high end, you hear it start kind of have that clarity. Let's go back to the original tone. I hope it comes out on YouTube. It's a subtle difference, but it means, to a guitar player, those subtle differences mean the world. Have you ever heard an album and you heard a guitar tone, you go, man, that tone is good, but only if they had this or only if you had that? Well, it's because when we hear that's something that other people don't pick up on, for some reason it inspires us. It's just the way it is. It's the craziest thing. That's where inspiration comes from. Okay, so let's do another thing that I do. Let's just say you like that tone and you want to have a lead tone. Don't go over here and have the Excel control switch boost the volume. You should have a good volume, and something should happen to your lead tone that makes it cut through the mix. Don't think about volume. Think about cutting through the mix when it's time to solo or whatever. So let's go to the equalizer, and I'm going to show you what I do. I was kind of lost here. Quick setting. Let's flatten everything. So now, when I play my guitar tone, I want to mess with this a little bit more. Hold on. like that. A little bit better. I'll just leave it there. I would tweak forever if I wasn't recording. So if you turn it on, no difference. Everything's leveled, right? Your cut in your tone, what cuts through and also gives it that real singing quality for your lead sounds, it has to do with the mids. In particular, these two right here, and then of course you're gonna play with the mid, what shapes the mid frequencies. This is the level of the mid, and this is what kind of shapes the mid. So let's see. I'm gonna just hit an open string lick. I'm gonna turn up the mids. It's very subtle. I'm doing this with one hand. Okay, so that's a good starting point. So this would be my rhythm tone. I would step on the Excel control pedal or whatever I programmed it to. The singing kind of like turn it off. Big difference. Not a bad tone. That doesn't sound bad. You click it on. That's a little tip you can do. Now we can get into adding a little bit of that, delay and all that stuff like that to really bring out the. Sorry, I have a microphone like right against my face, and it's kind of like getting in the way. So what I would do, one of the things you could do is I would assign these two, the EQ and the delay, I would assign it to the Excel control pedal. So when it's on the floor and I push the Excel control pedal, I would go from these two turned off and then all of a sudden it's time for my solo. All right, guys, I think this just about wraps up this video. If it was just me by myself and I wasn't recording, I would be tweaking, to my heart's desire, because I really like experimenting with different sounds. I hope this video showed you something that maybe you didn't think about before, something so simple but so effective to use the resonator function to enhance an okay tone and just push it to that next level, and to use the EQ on top of that to really make that lead sound pop out of the mix and have that lyrical singing quality. And then on top of that, just a little bit of delay just to kick it over the edge. So until the next video, guys, keep rocking on. Take care.